Can you believe it? Round 14 this season is getting away from us. We're in the middle of the buys, of course, so not having the full complement of the 9 matches. But of those that were played, there were some very, very interesting results. So I'll hand over to you, Caliper, and I'll just drive along with you.
Well, I've got a lot of notes written down, Gaz. I think that I want to start with Carlton and what they produced, because in the first quarter I'm going, it's the same old. Can't score, stagnant ball movement, no efficiency going inside. Gold Coast dominating really the first quarter of footy. Players just out of touch, like Harry Mackay leading out, dropping simple marks under no pressure. Skill errors left, right, and centre in Carl. It's very symptomatic of what has gone on for the year. And then in the second quarter, they played as good a football as you've seen any team play this year. And you could see the belief in the group grow, and you could see the fans get behind them, and that just gave them a boost. And it had me thinking, like, it is great watching Carlton when they're at the top of their game at the MCG and the crowd comes in behind them. It's like it's one of the great sights, and we have missed it on the bigger stage. But it was done through the midfield, and the damage that they did from centre bounce was extraordinary. They kicked 8 centre bounce goals for the game. Cripps got himself back into form. Walsh was getting the ball front of centre and streaming out of stoppage, and Chera was excellent as well. And then their forwards, not ideal, like they didn't have their greatest game, their forwards, but they got some isolation and got it done. So it was a relief for Michael Voss. He spoke about that after the game. But have you got a theory on how you can be so poor and then you can flick a switch like that in one quarter of footy, and they kick 9 in the second quarter to none?
Yeah, so they wouldn't want to be relying on that style of footy to winning them games going forward, because that just, history suggests that just doesn't happen. But hey, if you're a Carlton fan, you can jump on and give us your thoughts, because you've been kicked around a bit throughout the year, and rightfully so, because you haven't been getting the job done. I don't know. I think if you start a game in that fashion that they did, and I don't want to be too negative on it, then I go, okay, well, they've made some adjustments. They had a great week of planning. They've got their centre bounce set up work, but it wasn't in that first quarter. It was at second. So I'll be really interested to know whether they know what it was. Whether Michael Voss just got the quarter time. I didn't see the quarter time huddle and just blew up at him, or because if you plan to be, to have some centre square dominance, then you'd think you'd see some results in the first quarter of that, and we didn't. It didn't come until the second. And not only did we see results, we saw results that are out of whack with the competition. Doesn't matter how good you are, you don't kick 8 goals or 7 goals from centre bounce clearance at all. So I know they've got the bye coming up, which I don't think is a great time. I think they'd rather be riding this, but that's just the way it goes. I don't know. The lasso of truth around Michael Voss, did you see it coming at quarter time or not? Well, I'm not overly convinced. Sometimes it just happens. It just rolls and you go with it, but you don't really know how.
And that's what it felt like. That's what it felt like. But it did take you back to what they did early last year. I mean, that power
strength,
and whether that is sustainable. So he spoke after the game. He said, "What's the emotion?" He said, "Well, some joy, more relief." And you could see that clearly they were relieved. But I want to play you this when he was asked about the midfield.
No, I cracked in today. Absolutely cracked in. That was a version that I've seen before. And I hope I continue to see.
So that they cracked in today, and that's the version you've seen before. But to your point, you can't be relying on that. That is not what the best teams are doing. Yes, they crack in. Yes, they can score from stoppage. Port Adelaide #1 scoring team from stoppage. We know Melbourne can do it. We know Collingwood can do it. But they do it in other ways as well, and that's off turnover. So not quite sure they've got their game plan where it needs to be to compete with the best teams.
Yeah, some other things that they did do was they left Lewis Young out. Jack Suwani didn't play. They went a bit smaller in the back half.
They've done that before, though. Like, it's not the first time Jack's been dropped.
No, he came back in. But I think from a backline point of view, we've been talking about the stagnant ball movement and those sorts of things. So whether they've been a bit more aggressive coming through the middle would suggest they have been. But, it came into place. And the other thing is fundamentally, when you come in with a mindset of we've got to put some pressure on the opposition as opposed to what they did against Essendon. So they've had 71 tackles. And this would be the concern for me, is that 33 tackles last week, 71 tackles this week. How many tackles are we going to get next week? And so that's the thing. And if Vossi can put a line through it and that becomes a standard for the rest of this year, then Carlton fans will be happy and go, we might win every game, but at least we know we're going to crack in and put pressure on the opposition when we don't have the footy.
Blues fans, give us your thoughts on that. Then the flip side is Gold Coast. And, well, I mean, we're in the same position, and I've heard you speak about this before. It feels like, I think you made the joke saying deja vu again at the time when you spoke about it. It's and spare me the text. I get that is not the way you pronounce that.
No, that's a joke.
It's a joke.
Our audience
it's a joke.
They've got a good sense of humour.
They are 8-36 after the bye, Gold Coast, in recent times, and all of a sudden now you go, okay, well, Hardwick's waiting, and he looks refreshed, and he's at the footy, and he's drinking beer, and he's smiling, and he doesn't look cooked. And we're going to be speaking about Hardwick to Gold Coast again when they perform like that, and that's probably their own. They've got no one else to blame but themselves.
Yeah, and you might say it's unfair and it's not fair on Stuart Dew, but when you're in contention, when you get yourself back into contention and you know that there's a massive shark circling and there's others and that you're on not shaky ground, but you've had to fight so hard to establish yourself and it looked like you had some momentum, but then the same thing happens again as it did last year, then of course the questions will be raised. And look, had they come to the MCG and competed and worked hard and got nutted in, by a goal or two, you go, okay, that's life. But when there was a final spot at stake for this footy club, and they'd kicked the first 2 goals of the game, they're playing against a team that haven't been able to score, haven't been able to hit the scoreboard for love nor money, and in the end they give up 18 goals.
And nine and a quarter. They're struggling to kick 9 in the game.
Yeah. So that will raise questions. And I know, I don't know Stuart very well at all, but he could justifiably say, oh, geez, come on, cut me some slack. Well, you won't get any slack cut on the back of that performance, just as Justin Longmuir won't. We'll get to them in a moment.
Yeah, that was the poorest performance of the weekend. Stewie Dew said the centre bounce numbers were extreme. He said this performance can't be a bear on their back and they're going to move on pretty quickly. Now, they play Hawthorn this week. They're going to be a challenge for them. That'll be at home, so they'll start favourites, but then it gets a bit tougher after that, Collingwood and Port Adelaide. And the Saints, so their final spot's in jeopardy as well.
Why are they different to how the Suns have been in the past? That is the question that was put to Stuart Dew.
Are you a different team or are you not? And their growth will come when they start coming more demanding on each other. So Ballard had the really ordinary effort in the goal line, and one of the Carlton players socketed it through for an easy goal. And I watched Matt Rao, and we love Matt Rao for everything that he is, but he went over and he high-fived Ballard and he patted him on the back. I thought, if you want to be Geelong, if you want to be Joel Selwood, if you want to get to the next stage, you go up and you say, that effort isn't good enough. And there's a way that you can do it in a demanding but respectful way. It's not high fives and pats on the back when you've just struggled to pick the footy over and it was a really ordinary effort. So the growth is going to come from Rao and Anderson and Lukosius and King being more demanding on each other, that those efforts are not good enough and they won't be acceptable. Because at the moment, I think they're too nice.
This is why I love work. Well, we haven't worked like this together. That attitude was me. That is me. What you just said out of my mouth 10 years ago, and I still agree with it. I'm hoping that what happens at quarter time and what happens behind half time, what happens behind the rooms is the opposite. Yeah, this is, hey, game day, we're going to be upbeat, we're going to be positive, but I hope they're driving it and demanding of each other behind closed doors, which we're not privy to. I see that and I wonder that as well. I saw one Richmond and St Kilda in the dying moments. Daniel Rioli knocked Brad Hill on his backside when the ball was getting centred. Yeah. And they took a mark and were going to kick a goal. And Daniel Rioli went over and helped him up and gave him a pat on the back. And so with me, in my old school, I go, come on.
Yeah,
but modern day, they go, well, that's just...
And maybe that is right, because you have seen a bit different with skill errors. Like I've seen Maynard kick out and kick a grubber and the opposition have kicked a goal and everyone's smiling and they move on pretty quickly, Collingwood. And that's their attitude and that's the attitude of Craig McRae. Different if it's an effort thing for me. So skill versus effort, that was a really poor effort. I don't want high fives and pats on the back.
The other thing I learned, or that struck me, Mackay kicked 3, Cripps kicked 3, Cottrell kicked 2, Chera kicked 2, Charlie Curnow kicked 2, DeConing kicked 2, and Owies kicked 2. So what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 players have kicked multiple goals. We went back through the records. We got to 2016. That hadn't happened since then, and we reckon it's gone further back than that.
Is that right?
2016 since they've had 7 lots of multiple goal scorers. So maybe there's a lesson in and amongst that too. Okay, and I've been big on it. Yeah, you got 2 leading goal kickers, you got 2 Coleman medalists. Why aren't you scoring? Well, maybe spreading the load, taking the pressure off those blokes, and being less predictable will work better for you.
So be careful what you wish for with Tom DeConing. There's a thought about, okay, we'll just trade this guy for a first round pick. I watched him yesterday and this guy's 23 and he looks to me, a real player. I thought his performance yesterday was the perfect spread of what you do. So 17 hit-outs, 3 tackles, couple of goals, contested, angry tackle. He was the one that got them back in after Pitnet gave away about 3 free kicks in the first quarter. But there's an acceptance from Blues fans that he's gone. I don't know if that's the right thing for them.
Well, yeah. No, well, what they accept and what they don't, what the club accepts might be poles apart. But there's also an acceptance amongst the footy world that he's going to get 600,000-700,000 somewhere else. Either we'll do that 8 weeks in a row, and then we might go and say, okay, we can. I know it doesn't work like that, but gee whiz, we can get excited. Last time Carlton had 7 multiple goal kickers that we could find, round 16, 2014 was a 32-point win against St Kilda. So Blues fans, you got to buy. You got some momentum. I don't know whether the buy's the best thing, but you have, and then you got Hawthorn coming up. So we'll find out. You got Hawthorn, Port Adelaide, I think. So then we'll find out.
What'd you make of the Dogs?
I want to go just. We'll go the Dogs. They did what they had to do. Their back line remains a work in progress, as it has been, as Luke Beveridge has said for many. They just haven't been able to settle, and now they lose the number one man, but the broken arm to Liam Jones and a hamstring to O'Brien, which is not going to be that big a deal.
Are you leaving Norton back? Garry, you've got Waitman kicking 6. You've got Lobb. You've got Ugle-Hagan. They look okay for you.
Yeah. I'm not relying on you. I think Ugle-Hagan's taken big steps, and I'm not relying on Lobb just at the moment. But I love the fact that he did it, and this is what really good clubs and great coaches do, is that you find out what you've got in your arsenal, so that if halfway through a second quarter and a semi-final, then you've got the option of sending Aaron Norton back. And I know that they always know he's capable of going there. I don't think they will, not the way he's coached, but it's a nice option to have.
He was asked about it after the game. I don't think they will either, but they conceded 12 marks inside 50 from 34 entries and 19 shots from 35 entries yesterday. For some reason, I don't know what it is, they do refuse to defend, the Dogs. They refuse to defend on transition. They're too easy to score against.
Yeah, and when they're at their best, they protect one-on-one matchups, and they don't get exposed one-on-one. When they do get exposed one-on-one, they look really vulnerable. But anyway, the Kangas were pretty competitive. I thought and they coming into that game, you knew they would be, given the strengths lie in Larkey and potentially Coleman Jones, in an area where they're vulnerable. So I think they're on the right track. It leaves you nowhere to go, that performance. So, Fremantle, like all Fremantle people, club people, are all protective of their brand, protective of their club, and can rail against criticism. And so my answer to that is play finals longer than a year. Win big finals, win significant games, and then you'll get respect. Right now, when you lose like that, then you don't earn any respect because you can't be trusted. And that, everyone loses on the road. I've got no issue with that. But that was like, and he said it's like preparation. That's a team that just weren't prepared to play at a level that is necessary.
Got beaten up, he said. We got beaten up, and it looked like that. It looked like they didn't want to be there. And I said yesterday something seriously wrong at Fremantle for that to be the performance. The amount of missed tackles, and that's what we admired about Freo last year, was they were relentless, they were ruthless defensively, and the criticism was, well, what can you do? And you got the footy, and that was fair, but you knew there was going to be an honest effort, and there wasn't an honest effort. And my concern is, I watched Hayden Young, and he's a player who I think we all love and admire, but his performance was so off. And I'm going, if that's filtering through to the next group of players, then there's a real issue there. Sagging off opponents, missed tackles, skill level was poor. Their first quarter record, I think it's 1-17.
Yeah,
so
I think
where's that?
Yeah, so when Justin says we've got to look at ourselves as a coaching group, that's part of it. And ultimately, you know what it's like. The onus is on you to prepare well. Doesn't mean you're going to play well every time, but you should be at a level of whatever it is for you, whatever that stimulation level needs to be. Some people need to have a low heart rate to get themselves ready. Others need to be revved up to the back teeth. Whatever it is, work it out, because they haven't been able to. 17 games for 16 losses in a first quarter.
Yeah. It's bizarre. And you know where I start when you're playing against teams? Who's their best players, and make it a bit difficult for them. Toby Green was allowed to walk around inside 50 on his own. And this is Toby Green, like a player that is top 3 player in the game. So start there. It was the same yesterday with Gold Coast. Like, they just let Cripps get himself back into form because no one went anywhere near him. Well, surprise, surprise, he had his best game for the year. So, we'll speak to Adam Kingsley about what they did, but there's some serious issues with what's going on at the Dockers.
Aussie, as text through, Garry, you said Carlton's game style was unsustainable. Well, only as much as you're not going to score that. What I meant, Aussie, or what I did say, and you mightn't have heard, was you're not going to score like that from a centre bounce clearance. Or if you do, you're going to defy history. That's my point there. But the rest of it was in pretty good nick. Tigers are interesting. We've got 7:30 news headlines coming up. I thought that was a really good win because I rate St Kilda and I rate how hard they are to score against, yet they did. They scored against them. And I'm fascinated with Andrew McQualter. Now he's 1 win 3. He's 1 loss and then 3 wins on the bounce. He's got a buy-in from that playing group that, not that Dimmer never had more buy-in from his group than probably anyone in recent time, but towards the end it looked like they were a bit tired of him and he was a bit tired of them and a bit tired of the whole thing. Well, not from what I saw from Dustin Martin on the weekend, a couple of edits of him. He was as switched on to the defensive side of the game as I've ever seen him.
34 he had, so getting his hands on the footy again wasn't his best ball use game, but the conditions were hard. Ross described the ball as a cake of soap. Just a couple of changes. Cochin back on ball has been important, as has Bolton. So it does make it interesting for them with where they're going with the coach and whether he doesn't seem to have the presence to me of a senior coach. But do you need...
Neither did Craig McRae.
Well, probably not, but now he does. So
this is what happens though, so the timing was impeccable for Damien Harvey. He sensed it. I think the players sensed it. And what that opens itself up is to a new, and then, so last week we showed it, Cochin back into the middle, Short back to half back, Bolton back into the middle and Baker forward. Just 4 changes for a new coach. And I'm not saying that's been the panacea, but up it goes and away they go and they just look to be re-energised. And, I mentioned over the week, Paul Roos got a job halfway through the year, and by the end, Terry Wallace had a contract. Terry Wallace had a contract to coach at the end of the year. Paul Roos took over and made it impossible for the Sydney Swans to go anywhere other than him.
It's happened before, multiple. It doesn't mean it has success long term. I've been involved in one where Promise took over mid-year, 5-2 we went, and then it completely fell away. There's other examples of that. Reece Shearer, I think, as well. David Teague, perhaps. So, look, I don't know what the right way to go is. It feels like it's his job to lose, though, with the language out of the club from Brendan Gale as well about the next coach that they want to find.
Guys, are you going to see Pink in concert next year?
I don't do concerts.
Don't you?
No.
Well, you should, because she's playing February 23 and February 24 at Marvel Stadium. That's fine. It's after the Big Bash and before the footy. And Pink's ensemble was keen to have a third show at Marvel Stadium, Tuesday, March 12th.
Oh, come on, Pink.
Very close to the AFL season, when the season would start on Thursday, March 14. They'd play that weekend at Marvel. The AFL initially, my understanding was very hesitant to have Pink playing the week before round 1, and Pink's people said, hang on, we'll offer you a very nice sum of money, and we'll have Marvel Stadium on that Tuesday. And the AFL
Andrew
said...
Dillon's front row seats.
And they said, no worries. So Pink will play at Marvel Stadium, a third show, after she goes around the country. She goes to Melbourne and she goes all around the country, back to Marvel Stadium, play on the Tuesday night, and that will probably mean that Marvel Stadium is out of action for round 1 next year. Altogether. Unless they can get the turf back, which is very difficult if they've only got 3 or 4 days. The same happened this year with Optus Stadium and Ed Sheeran. There's a concert, it meant North Melbourne and West Coast was played in Melbourne. But it just shows that money talks. And I'm told, Garry, that the financial windfall from one concert at Marvel Stadium is very close to the financial windfall from an AFL Grand Final. So if you have 3 Pink concerts, that's almost like having 3 grand finals.
Well, let's be pragmatic about it. Who cares if there's a game in round 1 at Marvel Stadium?
Yeah, it doesn't really matter.
If they're going to get a financial, pump up like that, then it won't be that.
And you can go and watch her play.
Well, I know.
What's your favourite Pink song?
That one. No. The Mr. President
Dear
one.
Mr. President, yes.
What do we got for Gather Round?
Gather around. Kane, you might need to have some spare bedrooms in your house because there's going to be a lot of people sending you texts saying they want to stay.
Well, I think there's a few people that missed out
Me and Wisp on this
last time.
Didn't get an invite.
That didn't come and will be putting their hand up to come this year. When is it?
So my spies in South Australia tell me Andrew Dillon will make the announcement alongside the Premier over there today. And for those of you wanting to stay at Kane's place, it'll be round 4 next year, not round 5. So put this in your diary. The dates for Gather Round next year will be Thursday, April 4 through to Sunday, April 7, which is the week after Easter. It's the middle weekend for school holidays in a number of states around the country.
Nice.
So there'll be Hawthorn Geelong on the Monday, and then the Thursday night Gather Round will start. So round 4, not round 5 next year.
Like it.
It's been a huge success. They've got 3 more years, and I think Andrew Dillon will have a great opportunity to get his face on the TV today, just as Gil McLaughlin has done in the past, and announce it alongside the South Australian Premier.
And your mate Malla, he'd be happy with that.
Peter Malinowski's doing a terrific job, although Patrick Dangerfield was around at one of the hospitals when he was injured. So
what's going on there?
Focus on the ambulance breakdown and the health system as well as...
And we here in Victoria can't throw any stones in that.
MRO?
Yeah, MRO. I'm having an interesting look at Paul Curtis and his... what do you call it? I guess contact below the knees of Liam Jones, who has a broken forearm from this below the knees. Sorry, body contact for this incident yesterday in the game at Marvel Stadium. If this is a reportable offence, this is 2+ weeks for Paul Curtis because he's gone in and not shown a duty of care, and Liam Jones has broken his arm. So we'll wait and see what happens there. But it's Jack Viney was fined for a slide tackle a few weeks ago at Adelaide Oval. I wouldn't be surprised if this was cited, and then he received 2 weeks. But it's an unusual incident.
Rory McIlroy's birdied the first hole in the final round of the US Open, so he's gone to equal leader with Fowler and Clark at 10 under.
Jake Riccardi, I'm keeping a very close eye on Jake Riccardi at the moment from GWS. 38 games in 4 seasons, 22 years old. He's out of contract, career best 5 goals on the weekend against the Fremantle Dockers. This morning I can tell you 2 things. Hawthorn has expressed an interest in him.
Ooh.
And they are looking for more goal kickers, and their salary cap is in a strong position. And GWS is yet to offer him a deal. So you've got an out-of-contract forward who kicked 5 goals on the weekend, who's 22 years old, who hasn't been offered a deal by his current club. I think he's going to be hot property if he remains out of contract at the end of the season.
Absolutely. I was thinking that when I was watching it. He started his career really well and burst onto the scene, then for whatever reason wasn't as impactful, but came back and you thought, this is a young forward who there's a lot of teams that would be eyeing him off. Now, Adam Kingsley's going to join us, so we'll put that question to him. But they've also got Himmelberg as well, who they'd love to keep, but feels like he's going. Yeah,
and, that's the feeling, but you don't know for sure. And then there's Aaron Cadman, who they're giving games to, the number 1 pick. They'd like to keep him beyond next year, and they expect they will. But
he's a way off, Cadman. Is he
lucky to get games at the moment?
Well, he came in late as a replacement on
Jesse
the weekend.
Hogan was a late out. Late out.
He looks all at sea a little bit.
He'll be all right.
He'll be good. He's a young player, but he just looks off at the moment.
The market for forwards who are out of contract, Tom De Koning you've spoken about, Mitch Georgiadis we've spoken about on this program before, who's done an ACL.
I believe he's going to sign a short-term deal to remain at
2 years?
Well, that would be
short-term. That would be short-term.
Yeah.
You wouldn't sign a one-year deal.
No.
And, of course, Riccardi as well. I've crunched some numbers on the in fact, one of my mates, Benny Wilmoth, crunched the numbers on the caretaker coach situation. Since 2000, 10 of 25 caretaker coaches have got the senior gig, and 1 has ended up as the permanent premiership coach, which is Paul Roos.
That's a good strike rate in terms of getting the gig. Not so good a strike rate in terms of success, but we know how hard they're to get.
They love Andrew McQualter, and I remember clearly in 2019 when people were saying they love David Teague and Rhys Shaw and Brett Ratton. What I heard at the time is nothing compared to what I'm hearing now by Andrew McQualter. They really
a different kind of love.
Yeah, they really genuinely rate him and like Andrew McQualter, whereas I think a lot of the David Teague was a release from Brendan Bolton. Rhys Shaw's a fantastic football person, but didn't work out. And Brett Ratton worked for a while, but in the end they wanted Ross Lyon. But I think Andrew McQualter's another level from that. So he's very popular amongst the players there.